Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Antonio or to Raymond, whoever's going to start us off.
I can jump in here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to see all of your faces again. I feel like I've been away too long. So glad we are all here and are able to kind of get back to where we left off. I think everybody received the agenda tonight. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys for nominating me and Raymond to be co-chair. We definitely take that opportunity serious and just want to express our thanks in advance of that. And then, Michelle, do we just kind of jump into our roll call?
Yes, please.
Gotcha. This up. And then basically, I'll just have you guys kind of just say, I think it'd be great if everybody just said their names and then I can just like mark off on my own list. And then that we also kind of knock out our introduction to people who aren't a part of the board. So I think that would be great. And I'll just kind of go in order of the screen. So Chris, you're first on my screen.
I'm here.
And then Michelle, should we have anyone say anything about themselves, or how would you like to proceed with that? Or is it fine?
I think probably the best thing to do is to say your name and then what district, or if you're a mayoral appointee. So at least people that are watching, if this is their first time they've been on here, we don't want to, spend 5 minutes each person, but at least keep introducing who we are and what we represent.
Perfect.
Hey, Chris Johnson, District 8.
Joe Levy.
Hi, Joe Levy, District 5.
Got you next, Jake.
Jake Cohen, District 10.
Alan.
Hi, Alan Cogill, Council District 1, representing the North Side.
Brian.
Hi all, Brian Carroll. I live in District 10, mayoral appointee from MBAC.
Tangier.
Okay, I'm off mute. Hi, everyone. I'm Tangier Barnes-Wright. I am an at-large representative. I live in the Hale neighborhood. Hello, and welcome back, Antonio.
Thank you. Kurt, I got you next.
Hey, everyone. Kurt Morrison, mayoral representative.
Awesome. Raymond. I think you might be, it says you unmuted, but we can't hear you. Raymond.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, a stupid headset, sorry. Raymond Gutierrez, represent District 3. I'm a council appointee and I'm co-chair along with Mr. Antonio.
Perfect. And am I saying this right, Aileen?
Aileen McCallum, Southeast Denver, Southeast Denver, District 4, sorry.
And then Lucia, am I saying that right?
Yep, Lucia Brown. I live in the Baker neighborhood and I'm a District 7 appointee.
And then I have Michael Garcia.
Yeah, Michael Garcia, District 2.
Manny?
Manny Zubia, District 11.
Jason? I think Jason is
Jason Gallardo, Deputy Chief of Staff for DOTI.
Perfect. And then the last one I have on the screen is Chris.
Hi guys, Chris Pacheco, mayor's representative, live in Platt Park, District 7, but also from Val Verde, so representing all districts.
Thanks for joining. Perfect. And
Hi.
I'm in District 1. Alicia.
Hi, Alicia Brown. No worries. Hi, Alicia Brown. I am a mayoral appointee.
Perfect. And then that is everyone I have on my screen. Please speak up if I skipped over you. All right. Perfect. Raymond, did you want to jump in and do the next section, or I can keep going too as well?
Hey, Raymond, if you're talking, I don't think anybody can hear you.
Sorry, it's this headset. So I don't know if anybody got a copy of the draft of the bylaws. That's what we were discussing this past week. Just want to see what everybody thinks of it. Anybody has any objections, anything like that?
Raymond, I am curious if you and Antonio received the notes that I put on there. They were very simple and straightforward.
I'm looking, is it the one that was sent through Google Docs? That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, I think that's the what I thought that's what we were supposed to use. I did not overwrite it, but I did make comments in it.
Okay, let me enlarge, let's see. Yeah, Chris, I got your notes from the 7th.
Yeah.
Nothing
earth shattering there. It's just some observations.
Yeah, about let's see, suggesting that we try to insert ourselves into the straw man review of future budgets.
Raymond, do you want to pull up the you want to share your screen?
Let's see.
Or I can share mine, because it'd be good if everybody could be, following along.
Yeah,
There was also some highlighted sections that we really need to talk about.
Yeah, can you do that, please, Michelle? I can't.
Sure. No worries.
Sorry, guys.
So the only comment on that, inserting ourselves into the straw man, is that obviously once it's baked, it's baked. And it would be much nicer to actually see it being developed or as it's being developed, rather than as a perfunctory, here it is. And I'm not saying that that's how it would be, but it'll be easier for us to now, trim tab it if we see it early.
Yeah, good point. I mean, we are the advisory board approved by the voters to give our input on stuff like this. And I think that would be, very helpful to our positions to guide DOTI.
The bylaws certainly have the spirit of that. I just don't, I think it should be explicit.
Right.
I just want to add that I was unfortunate that I didn't figure out how to get into the Google Docs or something. And I actually was in a bike accident. Everything's okay. So I'm at home right now. Anyway, I did add something in the front, and I could only send it via email, and I sent it maybe less than an hour ago about a comment that I could just add again. Pretty minor. I liked everything. Just what Christopher was saying. They're minor comments. You guys did a great job. I admire what you guys did, because I could never have done anything like that. So I'm glad we can get, as I would say, down to business. But I did have a comment on the first part, and I just thought it was, if I can say what that was, it's all about transportation, getting from point A to point B and safely and all that and everything else. And I totally agree with that. But I just wanted this as an architect and designer to be more than that, and to think of the right-of-way as more than just a corridor to get from place to place. And so that's all. I just wanted to add a little bit more loftiness. And I said the thing is that these are actually outside rooms, but that's more of an architectural term, and I don't expect that to be part of this document. But somehow give somebody the idea that this is beyond just a transportation corridor. So that was my main comment, and I didn't word it very well, so looking for any suggestions there.
First, before I say anything, I did want to everybody know, give a big shout out to Brian and Alan, because they did the heavy lift on our bylaws. So more props should go to them, and we were just kind of just spectators to what they had already put together. So I wanted to shout that out first. And then two, I did see your comment, Joe. And one thing I thought, and I wanted to kind of hear your response to it, was first of all, I like what you said. And if I could, I'll just read what he said. But he said that to elevate the right-of-ways to the multifunctional and adaptable outdoor rooms representing the best of Denver and its citizen wherever possible. And I think you kind of touched on it here in your comment, actually, Joe, was that I think it's pretty specific, which we can definitely do. And if you don't feel like it falls under one of the current umbrellas that we have, then for sure, let's add something else to make sure that we're covering that. I think too, one thing to think about is I know everybody probably has a couple items that they're super specific on, which I think as a group, even if it's not stated in our bylaws, as long as it falls under one of our umbrellas, that as a group, if we decide to pursue that, I think we can pursue that for sure. So I just kind of want to hear what your thoughts on that and everyone else's thoughts, because I definitely feel like Brian and Alan gave us a great start, and we probably could add a lot more specific things in here now that, really speak to a lot of the issues that, we all see. But I think one thing too, we can say is that if it fits on the umbrella, that right there gives us the permission to pursue more action or information or whatever we want to see. So what are your thoughts on that, Joe?
Oh, I'm perfectly good with that. I think that's a great solution. That's just something that jumped out at me, and why I joined the committee was to do what I was saying. So the way you're want to handle that, it's fine with me, and whether it's on a committee or this part of it, I just wanted to bring it up at this time so we didn't lose sight of it. So that's fine. Thank you very much, and very good comments. Thank you.
Chris, did you feel like your comment was answered too as well before? Okay, gotcha.
I'm wondering what definition of equity are we using under role and purpose? The Transportation Infrastructure Advisory Board will strengthen Denver's work to address transportation infrastructure challenges equitably. I'm just wondering, is equitable designed in the mobility action plan, and are we using that? I kind of feel like our definition of equity should be in our bylaws.
I agree, and this is actually a topic we briefly touched on with Brian and Alan putting together equity. And I think one thing that we want to do was honestly see how DOTI is actually defining that, right, in their own work. And then from there, if that feels like it's satisfiable, which honestly, my hope is not super high on that definition or how they even measure that to start off with. And Raymond, you chime in too on what you think, but I think when we briefly touched on it, it was like, okay, we don't want these to be, another buzzword, and we actually want to see how they're defining that. So if there's some secret, some kind of way we can sync how we define in the same way that they define how they measure equity in that matter, I think that would be great. But I mean, obviously it's a starting point for us to see, hey, what does that look like from our point? I just want to make sure that when we do are working towards what that definition or how we measure that is also something that is relatable to how DOTI is measuring that too, so that when they do provide us statistics or things like that, it lines up with what we envision as a board, what that is. Aileen, I see you up there too as well.
Sorry, Aileen.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I'm in the mobility action plan. I don't think there's a definition in there. I searched for the word equity and it came up once. I mean, so I'm not sure if it seems like a place where we could, where there's some work. Yeah, I'll stop now.
So I was just gonna say, I realize this might take a little bit of time because she's brand new, but the mayor just appointed a new chief equity officer, and I believe that she leads the Office of Social Equity and Innovation. And we absolutely could look to, our plans, or if DOTI has some other language where they define equity, that would be great. But I do believe maybe even better could be a citywide definition of equity. So again, this might, just because she's brand new and I think that's just getting going, I don't know what resources they already have as an office, but that might be worth it to just have it take a little bit longer, so that the definitions that we are working around are the same ones that the entire city is working around.
I agree.
Alicia?
So my comments were kind of along the same vein, or along the same idea. I was thinking of it more so from the Board of Public Health that has declared racism, et cetera, equity as a public health issue, and they have a definition of equity that aligns with the Office of Social Innovation. And so I'm wondering if we could look at all of those, the Board of Health, along with the working with Aisha, who has just been named the Chief Equity Officer, to see if we could be in alignment. But also I feel like it's two things. It's one, providing a definition, and two, having some type of commitment to measurement, because we oftentimes talk about and have the definition within our bylaws, but we don't have anything that says we're going to measure that, or how we're going to measure that, or keep track of that. So if there's some type of way to have an assessment to score ourselves, quote unquote, but to really think about that as we're crafting these bylaws, I think is very important, a measurement aspect as well as a definition.
I agree with that as well.
Same here.
Anyone else have anything? That Raymond? Is that you?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. No, maybe one of our future meetings or next meeting or something, we can get her in to hopefully discuss, what the city's meaning of equity is, stuff like that. So hopefully we can amend that into our future bylaws. Good points.
I agree. I wrote all that down so we don't forget. Alicia, I didn't know if you had your hand up again, but I just wanted to double check.
No, I'm sorry, I never put it down.
Kurt.
Hey there, I just scrolling through this now and finding a few more matters I just wanted to flag for the group. One, I would like to add my name to the list of people saying this is really well done. I'm really grateful for all the work that went into it. In the vein of fine tuning here, there were a couple sections I wanted to flag for discussion. One is sections 2.4 and section 2.6 on terms and removal. So it looks like the language here as it is setting up terms that are applied to each of the members, as well as a process for removing a member from the board, which I think there's a lot of good intent behind that there, but my worry is those are not consistent with the city charter that governs what this group is. So for example, if this board were to vote to remove a member and the city councilwoman who appointed that person disagrees, the charter would trump and that city councilwoman's person would stay on. So anticipating some conflicts there, I'd suggest at least under the removal section that we consider if someone for whatever reason merits removal, that this board or the board chairs inform the appointing authority of what the issue is and then leave that to the appointing authority to adjust. A similar thing on terms as well, since nothing's called for with terms in the city charter, I'd suggest we not have something in there like that and then leave that to the appointing authorities based on who they think should be representing their district or the mayoral representatives. As much as it does make sense here, I just don't see authority for that to be in the bylaws that comes from either ordinance or from the charter. And a third and final thing to flag for the group, the section 2.8 conflicts of interest. That's a really good statement there, but I'd suggest we simplify it even more and just say board members shall abide by the city's code of ethics, because there's a much more voluminous ethical code that the city has in place, including a lot of ordinances here that are far more specific than the statement we've got there. So I'd suggest we just incorporate by reference all of those laws that are out there.
Let me add something to the question about terms. The terms were actually dictated by the Board of Commissions and boards of commissions from the mayor's office and from council. So they're the ones that came up with the 1, 2, and 3. So the council was part of that decision.
Is there a resolution then, Michelle, that we could just point to or incorporate that way?
A resolution? No. But when they set up, when council and the commissions, the board and commissions set up all of the boards, they start with a 1, 2, and 3. That's not in the charter. And then you guys get to decide when you're termed out. You want it 1 term, 2 year, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and then you can write that in there. Does that make sense? Am I being too? I'm not making. Am I being clear enough, Kurt?
I think I follow you on that. So perhaps if we reference that and saying in the inaugural selection cycle, according to agreement by the mayor and the city council, terms were staggered at and then go on.
Okay.
So that way we acknowledge that was not the terms aren't set by this board, but by our appointing authorities then.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think, Kurt, I think you had pointed out for the conflicts of interest. This actually reminds me of a topic that we discussed on the Healthy Food for Denver Kids Commission, where we did reference that resolution, but we also did call out that too as well. I mean, I'm fine either way, but I think it just made it super clear, especially when it came to voting on that conflict of interest for us on that board. So I think I'm fine anyway. I think, and I can't remember if we specifically called that out because what the city had already stated it wasn't specific enough for our commission, and that might have been why we called it out. But I'll do some more research on that too as well. But I know that was a big topic there in terms of calling it out in that board specifically. And I think it might have been because it just wasn't specific enough when it came to a commission or a board. This is my 2 cents there. Jason.
Yes, thank you. And great job on this. This looks amazing in such a short period of time too. I know these take a lot of effort, so great job on that. I did have a few things I wanted to point out, like the area where we're requiring the executive director to show up to every meeting and those type of things. Just understand that this bylaws do not govern DOTI. DOTI's not a member of this board, but not that Adam wouldn't want to come to these meetings or not, but that the next executive director could say no, and that there is no standing that this has over him or her. So that I just want to know, if you pass this document off to somebody 5 years from now, and you're passing it off to a whole new board, I don't want the expectation there that the executive director is going to be here, not knowing who that is, who that person is. Definitely there should be a pathway of saying how we formally ask for the executive director to be here to give us an update quarterly or to be here daily. That governs you on how that process works. But governing DOTI on saying the executive director has to be here for every meeting, there's no authority through this document. So just kind of, I'm not saying that Adam wouldn't want to be here. I'm just saying that the governing power is not there through the charter that was passed, through the charter language when this was passed, and through the bylaws. The bylaws doesn't govern DOTI. Just for clarification, and so that we make sure, you know, the next group that takes over, they understand that they're not walking into something that is baked in and it's going to happen automatically.
And I'll speak to this point, Jason, because this was something that I added after speaking with the people who set up the Parks and Rec department. And this really came out of the need for us to make sure we have some accountability there, right? And one thing I'll briefly mention was that initially when that board was set up, they were having these discussions, but they weren't having, Happy Haynes wasn't there. And so, and I mean, we were all brought in, not, you know, for people to hear us to talk, but to have that accountability, to access to that ED. And that was something that was really born, that they said like, hey, you know, this is something that we asked for. Now, obviously that's not something that was Happy was happy about, but I mean, this is, and I'm speaking for myself, but I feel, I want to let everybody else say that, but this is really just a push to make sure that when we're having these discussions, when the public is there giving their public comment, that they can have that direct access to the ED, because ultimately us giving direction to anyone else, we just want to make sure that that presence is there and we're not being thought of as an afterthought. And so
no, I understand completely the reasoning behind it. I get it. Like somebody who's sat on boards and very active in the community, it's better to have the person. I understand the reasoning behind it. I'm just throwing out there that the bylaws do not govern DOTI. And if another executive director comes in and says, no, I don't want to, Happy is there because she is choosing to be there. There's no reason that she has to be there based off their bylaws. And I think that is a good effort by executive directors to do so. I just want to make it really clear that I don't know who the next executive director is going to be, you know, 5 years from now. And I just don't want to falsely give the expectation that that's a requirement. But you guys could put whatever you want in here. And I'm just letting you know that it doesn't govern DOTI, and DOTI could, the executive director could decide if they don't want to come to this meeting, they'll send a deputy instead. And we don't have any, this wouldn't have any say over that, is what I'm saying. And it's not that Adam is saying one way or another. I just want to make that very clear. This is just an understanding that this is a really good document to hand over to the next group that ends up coming, and understand without having to have this conversation again. Maybe we make it a little bit clearer that they're here every meeting. But it's up to you guys. I don't want, I'm just giving you kind of understanding from that perspective.
I don't think that the text indicates that we're asserting any authority over the executive director. I think it's pretty clear that it's a request. And I think with that in mind, I think given all the points about things we've seen with PRAB and other groups, I think it's really, really essential that the board does request. Again, there's no authority in that statement, the way it's written. I think it's super well written and that it's a request. But I would really, really advocate for leaving it in there, even understanding that it's not a mandate and we don't have the ability to mandate, but it's an important request.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, this I think is up to you guys because again, DOTI is not a member of the board. We're the information that comes to, so it's up to you guys what's in there. I'm just giving you a perspective that, you know, I don't want it to be misunderstood that if the executive director at any point decides not to be here for a meeting, it's not required. But yes, totally understand and agree with the idea. The executive director or deputies being at these meetings is very important.
Aileen?
Yeah, I just wanted to just keep on with the comments that I think regardless of whether or not it's required, I mean, this is like just a really sticky conversation because kind of Antonio, you kind of laid it out with the situation with parks. I mean, I don't even want to imagine a world where the DOTI ED does not feel some responsibility for conversing with this group. And I totally understand setting representatives, and I'm actually comfortable with if we wanted to soften the language to say that the expectation is that the executive office sends the ED or his or her representative. But I just really want to emphasize that I think we need to, in whatever fashion we can, lay out that the expectation is that there is a dialogue between this body and the leadership of DOTI. Otherwise, we are heading down a rough road.
Yeah, and I don't want to imply that. I that's not what I'm saying at all. Not at all.
And I'm just more I'm more reiterating, I think. Well, I hope that it's other folks in this group body agree with me. And I think Antonio
absolutely
articulates that as well as Jake.
And to Antonio's point, I think that's a what he did there with, you know, talking about parks is a great example of how this is so well done, where the leadership is always there and present to be a part of the conversations. And I think that DOTI under this leadership agrees with that. I'm not giving that impression at all whatsoever. The point is, I just want to make sure that everybody is not going into this blindly and understands that this is a governing document for the board versus a governing document for DOTI. And just to clarify that, not to say that this doesn't need to be in here or should or should not be in there. I just wanted to make sure the clarification is there.
Did anyone else have any additional comments on this point? And thank you, Jason, for that. Definitely, I think this is going to be a topic that we continue to discuss. I mean, obviously, just kind of hearing some of the comments from everyone else is we just ultimately looking for that accountability, that transparency, and you know that starts with the leader. And obviously, you know, nobody can have 100% attendance, but that is something that we hope that we can get and will push for through the avenues that we have, just so that we make sure that we, not just us as a board, are being heard, but when we have that public comment sector, that people feel like this is a place where they can get the access that you really typically don't get of an ED in the public section outside of, you know, doing community engagement. And so we just want to take it a step further, having some accountability and that transparency for this group and just moving forward. So if anyone doesn't else have any comments about that issue, did anyone else have any comments about any other issue in the bylaws?
Alan and Brian, did you guys want to talk about the highlighted sections here because you highlighted them purposefully?
The highlighted sections are really just intended to show fundamental departures or either additions or changes from kind of the original text that was handed to us. So we just wanted to make sure that we were calling out some kind of substantive changes that we had made to the document.
Yeah, I'd echo what Brian said. It was just really just to make it easy for folks to see what's new.
Do you do you want me to scroll down and we could look at all the highlighted, or how do you want to move forward with this? We definitely want to look to adding more of equity definition in there, according to what I heard earlier, and we'll look at that for the next. But do you want me to scroll down to the different highlighted sections? How do you guys want to keep reviewing this document?
I mean, I would recommend that people go in and put comments in the document or suggest changes in the actual document using the suggested changes feature. You know, it is quite a lot of work to create original content, especially if you don't know the general thrust of what you're saying. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for us to collectively go through this and update it.
Yeah, our comments I think would be adequate, you know, in essence of keeping with the time of the agenda. If Michelle, if you want us to give a quick color commentary on each of the major changes, we're happy to just spend 30 seconds to do that if you think it'd be helpful, or folks could review on their own time, either way.
I kind of like what Brian said, if you guys are okay with it. If everybody's okay with it, these guys have given you a probably 90-something% there. If we could just take it over the finish line, is everybody okay with that? Okay, so I would say, if you guys are okay, that the charge is to review this in the next 2 weeks. And then I'll send a deadline of when we'll have that, and then we'll have what the bylaws look like. And so and then we'll move towards a vote at the next meeting. If we're ready. If you're not ready, that's fine too, but I think we're very close.
Antonio and Ray, you know, would you like Brian and I to take another cut and revise some of the changes based on input from like Alicia and Angier and Kurt and others that have spoken today to incorporate that as well?
Yes, that's very, yeah, that's very good idea to do that. I think it would make sense just to add that in to future drafts so we can vote on a final version.
Also, too, I also want to point out too, just because I don't know how quick or how soon we're going to get to that perfect definition of equity that we want to see, that if we do, let's say, vote on this next meeting, and after that meeting, we come to a decision like, hey, we're satisfied with the definition of equity and even additional topics, then I think we also do have the ability to ratify the bylaws to include that too. So I don't want everybody to feel like this is it either, like one-stop shop. I think there's probably be something that we touch on a few more times. So I just wanted to put that out there too, so we're not feeling rushed to specifically when it comes to the equity part, feeling rushed to flip on something that doesn't really meet the intention that we operate with.
This is Tangier. Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. Thank you for clarifying that. I was thinking, oh, what if we don't have, you know, like the citywide definition, or we don't know yet, and then we adopt our bylaws, we can always go back and amend them. So that sounds good. I did have a question about it has to do with the equity definition and, you know, how we're measuring. I mean, is it something then, this is down the road, that would become like a recommendation from this committee to DOTI, that definition then be written into our transportation and mobility plan? Like, I could see that coming out of this committee, and I don't know what the process is for adding or amending, you know, plans that have been adopted already. That's just kind of some food for thought. It would be odd if our bylaws had, if there was like a citywide definition or something and our bylaws had it, but the mobility plan that we are using to do all of our work does not have that definition in there, I guess. So it's kind of a question for down the road, but
I think it's something we definitely should explore. I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't or couldn't. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. If anyone else had to chime in on that too as well. Okay. Um,
Antonio, I'm sorry. I have a quick question. I don't know if it has to do with equity. Well, in some ways it does. When on the Board of Health, as in my experience on the Board of Health, the city assigns a specific city attorney to be the liaison between the staff, the board and the community, and the board and the staff, and that city attorney is someone we rely on for guidance, for et cetera, if we have a question about something that's going on. And I don't know if they do that because we hear public hearings, et cetera, for that board. But I'm wondering if this board will have a city attorney liaison that's assigned to us as a board. And if so, is there a way that we can share our bylaws with that person to make sure that they're in alignment with the city charter? I mean, it might just be good to have another set of eyes through the city attorney's office, but I know that we have, as a part of the Board of Health, specific city attorneys that come to our meeting, every meeting, and provide explanation. They don't give us, if there's a specific question, if there's something that we need to know as a board, then we are directed to the board city attorneys. So I don't know if that will be the case with this board as well.
Michelle or Jason, I could jump in real quick if that's okay. So we likely won't have a city attorney assigned to this board. I think the nature of the two boards is a little bit different. That doesn't mean that we don't obviously have city attorneys that work very closely with us. And I think as we have meetings that would benefit from a legal opinion, we can by all means ask and have a city attorney present for those discussions. I don't think it would be efficient to have them at every meeting on that, but we can also, once we've got the final draft of the bylaws, by all means, we can have our city attorney review those and provide any comments back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
Anyone else? Perfect. I think the next item that we had on our list was talking about public comment and discussion and voting on that potentially. And how we want to have that incorporated into our meetings moving forward. And really just want to open it up to the floor to see what everyone else thinks and what that should look like, and kind of take it from there. Go ahead, Alan.
And but I also want to mention that we did put a section in for public comment in the bylaws as well, in case that might be a good sounding board. Brian and I just took a stab, and that you and Ray saw. If Michelle, you wouldn't mind maybe pulling that up, that could help us maybe further this discussion.
Okay, so Alan and Brian, guide me to where I've seen it. I read the whole thing many times, but tell me when I get to it. I think it's in public. I think it's in meetings, right?
I think it's a meeting.
Here it
norms.
is.
Yeah,
Okay, there it is. Okay.
And to give you all some context, some of this was inspired by what we've seen at the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Some of it's inspired by what we've seen it's worked well with City Council as well.
And we give everybody like a minute to kind of read this and see what they think, and they'll chime in afterwards. And feel free to share kind of your initial reactions too.
This is solely on the structure of this. It sounds fine and great. My question is, how are we honoring the public comment and acknowledging it either in our meeting minutes or whatever, and then identifying, you know, what impact it had on us? Are we saying, yes, we agree with it, we're going to, you know, recommend this suggestion, or we have recognized it? How do we let the folks know that are spending the time to provide the information that we're hearing them and that it actually has value and impact on what we're doing? And I'm sorry for such an obtuse question.
I think it's an important one for sure, Chris, which kind of gets to the intent of, one, we don't want people to feel like they're wasting their time. Two, how can we take that and implement that into what we do? I guess the first question to your question to maybe address that would be, do we think it's better to have people speak before, like we get into anything else, or would it be better to have them speak afterwards, just in case we cover something that they may be asking about? Two, does that give them time to really get some more information about that question? So I think timing might play into that to make sure people are feeling like they're giving their worth. Because I was just thinking, if we have a topic, let's say about sidewalks, and somebody brings up that question, and that's something that we're going to touch on, then it's like, hey, I hate to use the answer like, hey, we're going to touch on this later in the meeting, and then you know what I mean. So it's like, do we have that first, or do we have them come in towards the end of the meeting where they've had time to kind of absorb what we've been talking about? And then two, I think that potentially maybe even having it closer towards the end of the meeting, when we talk about what are our next steps, then we can take that public comment that we received right before we talk about that and implement that into what we do moving forward. So I don't know what your thoughts are about that. Yeah, I see you have your hand up too as well. Hey, Chris. Sorry.
I'd like to say that when I was on the bond oversight committee for DPS, we had public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and we as members did not comment on the comments, because you can get a lot of really random stuff that people want to talk about. So I think probably the best way, in my opinion, is to say thank you, and then we can decide later on, I think, whether or not it's something that we're going to talk about. I don't think that we should necessarily be interacting with the public comment. I mean, when you give public comment at city council, you make your statement, they thank you for your time, and they absorb that. And I don't know if they discuss it in their own view or if it's on things that are going to vote about, but I don't think that we need to interact with the public commenting directly, at least not right there on the spot.
Certainly not on the spot, and you're right, that's how it's handled. I just maybe even just procedurally for this group, I'd like to make sure that there's a record of so and so shared this thought, and we heard them.
Yeah, I agree with Lucia. You know, we should hear comment. The purpose of comment is to help us be more informed as a board, right? And we don't have to make additional comment on top of it, but it will help influence us with decision making. And to your point, I like that last statement that Chris made of, recordation is key to make people feel like, yeah, I was heard and it was recorded in these minutes, because it just memorialized it, in my opinion.
So this is Alicia. I agree. I think that we should definitely have public comment, and we should definitely record the public comment. And it's where I struggle, because I do realize that we can't interact. I think it would make the meeting long, one, and we won't be able to interact with every public comment. And so I don't think that we should do that in the meeting, but we do, I think, have some sort of obligation to at least let people know that they've been heard and considered. And I don't know if after that, after the meeting, after we've been able to hear it, maybe there's a group that collects all the public comment and includes it in our notes, but in some way, let them know that their public comment was heard and considered. And then the only other thing that I have with regard to the process that was presented is that this is all relying on online access. I mean, we're already in Zoom meetings, et cetera. And I think that we have to take into consideration that there is a significant digital divide in our city, and everyone may or may not have access. And so I would suggest that we have some type of phone process where people can provide input as well, because relying totally on online access, I think, will eliminate some people from being able to provide their comments.
And wanted to put my 2 cents in there. We also have in the city, in my opinion, a language divide too. So we can get something going on as far as, non-English speakers. I think that would be pretty helpful too.
Raymond, can you elaborate on that a bit? Do you mean when they call in, or do you mean when we're having our meetings, we should provide interpretation services? I just want to make sure I know what you guys want.
Oh, sorry. As far as the public comments, if somebody wants to provide a comment, that's not in English. That's what I was getting at.
I think Nick originally had a hand up too. I don't know. I saw it go away, but if not, Alan, I see you.
Yeah, and I'll retract the hand. The discussion went where I was going to go, so I think you guys covered it.
Alan? Alan disappeared.
Sorry, I was going to say, I forgot to unmute. It might be nice if there is somewhere on our board website that the DOTI staff has done a great job having a location where our meetings are, but it might be nice if we have something in there, both maybe in English and Spanish or any other common languages in Denver, that says, hey, if an interpreter is desired for the board meeting, please request it X days ahead of time, both for something like sign language or for language translation. That might be something that could be nice and inclusive to allow folks to participate that want to.
This is Tangier. This may have been discussed at the last meeting at the end, but I missed it. Who would be taking notes on the public comment? Is that somebody on our board? Is that right? Or does DOTI assign somebody? Like logistically, who's doing that?
Logistically, that would be your board, someone on your board. Okay. I would be, as your connection to DOTI, I would help that person. I would be the one to monitor the phone, because we actually do have a phone line for the DOTI board. So I'd be helping getting the interpretation and making sure that I'd be doing all the logistics. But the person that would be, if you guys are not going to use a recording, if you're going to use someone taking notes and getting back to the person, you'd have to have that assigned to somebody. And you can either have that as one of your board member, elected official, or you can have that somebody that you know, each meeting somebody else's. You guys can decide who that person is.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
Another note on the interpretation, I would almost venture to have that there for us every meeting. I just know in the other boards, nobody had to request it. It was provided automatically. I think that's something we probably should do. Another thought too as well in terms of just making sure that we're reaching everyone. And I can't remember, but if, let's say today, you know, having a meeting and public comment, giving the people opportunity to have public comment at 4 o'clock, I'm afraid people might not, you know, be able to take off work, you know, just, I don't know how available people are during that work day still. So that was another question I wanted to pose to the group. Do we have it a little bit later so people are able to get off and get home to provide that, to have that time to give them comments? So that's another question I wanted to pose to the group as well. Alan, then Jake, then Jason.
Yeah, and I also want to call out, I think you're exactly right, Antonio, we want to make it accessible. Being able to show up at a meeting like this is a privilege for sure that not everyone has. So I think we wanted to have that email forwarding in there is why we added that. So anyone 24/7, 365 could get comments to this group and it'd be forwarded to everyone by email. So we could all see it if they're not able to be there in person at least.
Jake?
Yeah, the one concern I have about moving public comment away from the beginning of the meeting is it means that we could have votes in the meeting that precede public comment. And from a good governance perspective, that seems a little subpar to me. And I think that luckily the email address system seems like it might help with that, but I do have some concerns about having public comment after decisions could be made.
Okay. Jason?
Actually, Alan already answered my question, so thank you. You guys have an email that can be directed, you know, 24/7, so that's a good way of access as well.
And then Alicia, I just want to make sure, did you have anything? I see your hand up too.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to put my hand down, but I put all of my comments in the chat. If I don't want to keep prolonging us, but I just added some questions in the chat.
And just to make sure I'm hearing you, Jake, you're saying that you think it's better if we have people at the beginning give their public comment in case that we are having, you know, decision-making or something like that later on. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, like, for example, just to pick the ridiculous crab one, not to pick on crab, but like having a conversation about what to do with the geese, then having everyone comment about the geese seems the wrong way around. And so I don't know, just to throw an example out, I feel like it, from a good governance perspective, it would be good for us to have that at the beginning, just to provide more opportunity for people to respond in advance.
Okay.
I would also recommend, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
I would also recommend that in looking at this section in the bylaws, it is very prescribed. And usually bylaws aren't. So the reason is if something happens and you guys decide, well, we don't want to do 20 minutes, we want to do 30 minutes. Well, that's going against your bylaws. So we have to go back and actually amend the bylaws. So I would try to, and again, I think Alan and Brian did a great job of kind of writing a process, but I don't necessarily processes necessarily go in bylaws. So I think it'd be really kind of the essence of what you want. And then you guys will work on a process together and then we can amend that much easier if it's not in your bylaws. If that makes sense.
Thank you for that, Michelle.
Yeah, that's great, Michelle. That's one of the things I was going to hit was, you know, maybe broadening the language a little bit to make it where you're more flexible with your time, because you might find that 20 minutes isn't enough and you want to change that later down the road. And then also to Jake's point, I think that's right. You know, in most meetings, especially city council and those type of things, comments done in the beginning, because if an agenda is out for the topic that they're going to be discussing, somebody may want to give comment on that topics that are actually going to be voted on at that time. So to give them the opportunity to get to give their opinion on something, I think has a lot of value in the public comment itself. So just my 2 cents there, but
these are all great points. I guess kind of just hearing split, or if I'm not hearing split, I think it would be great for us to either have this like be something that we vote on. I don't know, or maybe it's just I'm the sore one thinking out. If that's the case, I'll jump in line with everybody else. But I mean, if you guys are fine with keeping it up front, I'm cool with that too as well. It was just I wanted to make sure that I'm not missing anybody else's point who didn't want it up front or potentially move it anywhere else. I think I might have been the only one. Okay. Up front it is. Were there any other comments that we want to make about public comment from anyone else?
I guess I just have a procedural question. When we've mentioned a vote on this, when we vote, are we voting on it exactly as in the bylaws, or are we talking about the potential change people have suggested to make it more vague? Like, I don't know if we're voting right now, but if we are, I'd love clarity on that.
No, I think Michelle made a great point, and I think maybe Brian and Alan can maybe touch on this. I think that would be something that we will want to do, right? To make it vague so we can have that flexibility there.
Yeah, we're happy to incorporate that feedback and the revision of the draft to make it more vague. I think it's a great idea.
Raymond, what you think?
Well, every so right in the ballpark, so I think that's great. We can just have, it's great. Sorry.
And then on the sidelines, what I'll do is I'll take the process that was outlined in the bylaws and actually make a process and then run it by everybody. And we can the great thing is if it's not in the bylaws, we can fine tune this as we go. But I'm hearing some, not urgency, but definitely it's time to open this up to the public a little bit. So I don't want the delay on the bylaws to keep you guys from moving forward with public comment. So if I could craft a process, a procedure that we could all look at, and then possibly in moving towards a vote, if that makes sense. So separate the two.
Michelle, did you say move toward a vote today or next meeting?
I don't think
I don't agree. I don't think we're ready.
Okay,
but I
yeah,
think
that's what I was thinking.
If I could pull out the meat of what their process is, create one, get it in front of you guys to edit, and then I think that's when we go to the vote.
Perfect. I think one thing before we move on to is how do we want to, because if we do plan on voting for this next month, how do we want to just have a rotating person who takes notes for public comment, or how do we want to do this? And I'm just kind of posing this out to the group, because I think that's one critical element that we need to at least have some kind of draft in here so we can vote for it next time.
Possibly look into seeing if somebody wants to run for like a recording secretary for our group.
Call out. We do have a secretary as an officer position, but Michelle, we are recording these on Facebook Live, and they are part of the permanent record there. Is that correct?
you're muted, Michelle.
Sorry. We're not doing Facebook Live this time, but all of this is recorded, and then we put this recording up on the website. So that's something for you guys to think of too, is that we do have technology. Since we're all doing this Zoom, we have technology readily available to us So you can decide, do you necessarily want someone to be writing this down, or because it's public record by having this in a beautiful video, is that enough?
Any thoughts on that last question by Michelle? Do we want to have the video be our recording? And I'm gonna just kind of blurt out what I think, kind of get back to Chris's point, and just kind of reality of things. Are we gonna go back, look at that video and take that and take those comments there, or will it be more efficient for us to really infuse what we get from the public comment by recording that, even if there's just like light notes and we just provide that to the group in the email? My personal thoughts would be that I think it would be great to at least have some kind of written transcript so people can see that. And even if it's just for us, I think it would just be great for us to have something tangible that we can revisit as a group outside of the meeting in case we want to bring that up or any kind of way. Jake, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I know Zoom has the ability to add a transcription service. I would assume the city would be using that in some department. I don't know if that would be available to us, but I think to have a transcription available not only helps us keep the notes, it also supports any deaf adults or, well, any deaf people that may want to review our event as well. And it may be a way to open up access.
Michelle, do you know if we have that service or not?
I don't know, but I will do the research.
Okay.
For sure.
Way to kill two birds with one stone, Jake.
Apparently, I'm just piling things on Michelle's list.
Yeah, thanks,
Sorry,
Jake.
Michelle.
If that's it, Raymond, did you want to kind of lead the standing committee conversation?
Yeah. Let me pull up my Google Doc. You talking about Article 5 there, Antonio? You there, Antonio? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Raymond.
Okay. Oh, no, you're good. So are we talking about Article 5, the committee section?
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
kind of agenda item here for just standing committees and
Yeah.
kind of want to get a fresh point on what everybody's thinking that way.
Yeah, so as it stands in the draft, Article 5, committees, the chairs may appoint and dissolve standing and ad hoc committees. The chair shall name the chair of all committees. Those committee chairs may in turn structure the committees as they see fit. Anybody have any objections to that section or anything they would like to add?
I think this agenda item might have been outside of the bylaws, Raymond. This was more for you guys to start brainstorming about what working committees you have or what standing committees, which we got into this a little bit earlier about, do we want an equity committee? Do you want a committee on micro transit? So kind of started kind of putting your ideas of really where you guys want to dig in.
Anybody have anything they want to put into this as far as committees you might want to start forming for the future to start nudging us to meet our goals as committee members?
Tangier?
Alan, oh, sorry, Tangier, and then Alan.
I'd throw in a shared micromobility committee. That I think that could be useful. I mean, I guess we could, come up with a list, and then decide whether or not it makes sense or combine some.
Okay, sounds good. Alan, your hand's up, and then Chris, I believe your hand's up too.
I think maybe one around budget, a group of folks that really want to take a deep dive on that, since you all have probably seen the city budget. It's several hundred pages long. So folks that might be able to dedicate some time to looking at the DOTI section of that.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I agree with what Alan just said, you know, maybe break it up into a budget, maybe even in operations. And to Tangier's point, even within the operations, we can break it up into subcategories there, but just throwing in my 2 cents.
No, all good points. All right, and then looks like on the chats, Chris volunteered for the budget committee, so we have 1 volunteer. That's good. Anybody else?
It might be great to have community engagement subcommittee potentially, and then maybe specific bylaws subcommittee. So whenever we tap that in again, we could probably just have that group take a deeper dive potentially. That's a just suggestion as well. I want to kind of give everybody's point on this because I've heard at least everyone say something to sort of this line in terms of taking a deeper dive into maybe projects. And so specifically having like a project group. I think, I don't know, I feel like if we do a project group, everybody's going to do it. So it's like, well, we might as well all do it. But that's something too that I think I heard being expressed as well. Brian, I see you got your hand up.
Just wanted to call out, I think we need to distinguish between an ad hoc committee and a standing committee. According to the bylaws that we've written, if you're a chair of a standing committee, you're a board officer and kind of part of the board leadership, whereas the ad hoc committees are more temporary in nature. So I don't know if we really want to proliferate, you know, a number of standing committees without really thinking through what the overall structure is going to be.
Good point. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I apologize. We dug into that when we had our little bylaw meeting. Was it last week? Yeah. And then Chris, you have your hand raised as well.
I do. Sorry, I conflated budget with projects, assuming they were synonymous. So, you know, and maybe they're not. But when we're reviewing the capital improvement program, the city budget, and that's going to show us what projects are outlined and in planning or in process. So I guess maybe someone that knows more can clarify that, but I would like to be able to help review the projects that are on the board and give opinion on how the budget has been, you know, pulled together for them. Is that too big?
No, we can certainly look into that. Maybe a project and budgets, or just change the budget committee to the project committee. I mean, if it sounds one and the same, we could probably work something out as far as that goes.
Chris, if I'm hearing you right, are you saying budget for upcoming projects, right? That's where you
That's what I thought. That's what I thought we were talking about when we were talking about budgets. But you know, as I think through it even more, you could say, well, projects are budgeted or unbudgeted, and they're just the projects that we believe should occur. Or are we just reviewing the projects that have already been proposed in this committee? I'm getting into the weeds, I know it, but I'll stand down.
That's a good question though, Chris. This is Tangier. It's a good question. Are we, like, do we propose like if we're presented with a list of projects and something is not on there, and you know, or do we say, well, we think something should be added to your list here, or are we just considering what DOTI, excuse me, is already considering?
Or the reverse, is this project nonsense and please spend your money somewhere else?
I want to kind of just thinking, I know we most likely don't have that authority to suggest projects. I think in the budget conversation or the subcommittee, what you would have would be that larger, like we know we got that one time a year, we don't do that big shebang of reviewing the upcoming budget. But I think it would be great if we could have some kind of focus on, okay, these projects were proposed to us. We had there set aside this amount. Where is that going? You know, are we in line with that? Are we is really monitoring how we're doing? Are we sticking to our budget, or is this project not getting funded anymore? Just making sure that we have some kind of time. Then I think you do have that portion of you have, hey, these upcoming projects. Then you have potentially current projects, which will be more along the line of, for example, the neighborhood plan in returns to transportation. So you really can break it up to where you have like those budgeted projects, the perspective of a project from a budget standpoint. Then you have those upcoming. But I think too, we don't want to limit ourselves too, because there has been expressed like, hey, you know, what about this project? We'll have the board give the board the ability to say like, hey, we're all interested in this project. We want to hear more. This kind of ties into more of the next topic, which is DOTI's presentation, which we would call and say, hey, can we get some more information on this? What's going on with that? But I think from a budget standpoint, it would be more of like, we know that subcommittee, we have that big shebang, what's done once a year, and then maybe fleshing out what that looks like in terms of monitoring projects with the budget throughout the rest of the year. So that's kind of what I was thinking in terms of budget. Obviously, that can fluctuate, but in terms of just like making sure we have that distinct separation of budget, upcoming projects, and maybe even potentially current projects, we just want to make sure everybody has an understanding what that is. I see Chris and then Aileen up there.
Yeah, Antonio, I think you're getting to where I was going to go. I think it'd be good for us to get an education from Nick and Jason and the DOTI team about how the budget works, because every year they go through a budget process in which they have a host of things where they have, you know, they have a 6 and 12-year CIP program in which they request for funds for funding those things, but not, to your point, in a whole shebang. They may ask for X amount of millions of dollars to fund a study, to fund this, to fund that. And they go through a rigorous budget process starting in January, basically through October, to do that. So, but along with that is, you know, not just the budget of, you know, projects, but they're also looking to fund, how do we get the resources to do those projects, i.e. staff and things like that. So I think it'd be good for us to kind of understand how DOTI's budget process works, so we can be more informed in how we want to set ourselves up. So just speaking from experience on that one.
Thank you, Chris. Aileen.
I hope this comment makes sense, but I get really confused about like what our actual authority is. And we've had a lot of these authority conversations, and I think there's a lot of questions about what we can actually influence at the city, given that we're an advisory board. So if I'm way off base, please correct me. But I really think we might want to think about this committee formation in terms of what can we comment on to elevate conversation. So where I'm coming at this, when I'm saying this, is thinking about how much publicity I saw in the media, mostly social media, because I follow like Twitter, when city council was asking really tough questions, going through the budget hearings the last couple of weeks. And for me personally, seeing the tough questions that they were asking really helped me as a constituent understand some of the issues out there. I think that they use their platform to identify and unveil a couple of problems potentially, or opportunities that may have been missed. And I think we might have a lot more influence, trying to get the influence that we want, if we are just really honest about what authority we have and really concentrate on the area that we can influence, which I would offer out there that I'm pretty sure we have, is that public dialogue. Like, we have that ability to influence a public dialogue, and then that in an indirect way may be able to help create some influence back on DOTI. Sorry, is it DOTI or DOTI? DOTI, okay. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for that, Aileen. Jake?
I'm a little worried about my Robert's Rules of Order here, but I was going to suggest another subcommittee, and I don't know if this is a bad or good time to do that. Not seeing any wild expressions, so I'm just going to power ahead. But I do think one committee I'm going to imagine we're going to need, hearing people talk in these events, is there's a natural lean towards the topic that we're all most affected by, which is transportation day to day. There's a lot that DOTI does in its traditional public works section that I'm actually kind of concerned will always play second fiddle if it doesn't have its own committee, particularly like waste management, sanitation, flooding. All those topics are really, really important to the work that DOTI does, and I want to make sure that they get their own space to be focused on, because I'm worried about neglect if it doesn't get its own room to shine. Not that waste management is really a shining topic.
I would almost group that in, so cliche, but environmental study kind of subcommittee in some form or fashion. I don't know how to, what we can call that. That would be that catch-all. But I think that's definitely important. Those byproducts of what DOTI does that doesn't necessarily touch into that transportation. To Aileen's point too, as well. I mean the public is, that indirect group that can put that pressure on DOTI, that we can facilitate that a conversation here at the board meeting that influences that in a certain way. I'm also too kind of in the same lane as you, like, hey, what authority do we have? But I think that's also part of the excitement of being a part of this board, is that we work to explore that too as well, to see what can we get accomplished. And of course, not having predecessors to see what they did, that is us, and that's our task. So Nick, I saw that you kind of came on and maybe you want to say something in response to that potentially.
Every time I have a good question or comment, you guys have better ones that totally make mine irrelevant. So no, nothing more to add. I agree with the discussion.
Okay. Yeah, Aileen, I think you get to a big point too. Kind of the underlying thread of what we do every day is, or do at this meeting is, how far can we push? How hard can we push? And how fast and how hard does that impact change? I wish we had an answer, but I think that's why we're here, and why we want to, we're gonna fall on our butt sometimes, and we're also going to knock it out the park sometimes. But I think part of the challenge for us is figuring out how we do that and how can we do that consistently. So that was spot on tonight. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anybody in the chat too.
I noticed Chris had his hand up for a while. I don't know
Oh,
if he,
sorry, Chris. My bad. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I think that was a mistake on my part, guys. Sorry, I just didn't know how to put my hand down.
I did want to give some acknowledgement to the chat. Alicia, we see your chat regarding just cleanups and things. I think it kind of touches on more of Jake's point of those indirect impacts of what transportation infrastructure has on us. I think that's definitely something that we should have a group that really focuses on that. I think that's, as to Jake's point, a lot of times that doesn't get talked about because it's not the sexiest part. So your comment about micromobility, Tangier, I do think it is a place there for us to have. I don't know. I want to see what you guys think on this topic. There are those niches within transportation and infrastructure. Do we think that we need a subcommittee that kind of touches on those, and that could be, I don't want to spread us too thin with so many subcommittees, because you do have the individual topics of sidewalks, pedestrian connection, micromobility, bike lanes, mass transit. Do you guys feel that we should spread, dive deep into that with a smaller group, or do you think that's spreading us too thin? And I want to stop there. Jake, I see your hands up.
My hand is up too after Jake.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tangier.
No, it's fine. I don't know how to raise my hand. It's okay.
Sorry for the risk of talking too much, but I do think we could absolutely break each of those into subcommittees. I do think one thing that's going to be important, and not to get into committee work, but complete streets is so important that I'm so conflicted about I want each of those topics to have their own level of attention, but I also want them to be seen as part of a whole. And so I think that's something we're going to have to navigate. And then I think just additionally, as far as just being really, really clear about some of the non-transportation work, I know that DOTI is responsible for trash collection in the city of Denver. We've got to, that's really not, I have opinions as a cyclist about how that affects bike lanes, but really not a transportation topic. But I just want to make, and Alicia brought up an amazing point. I totally forgot about the cleanups. Those are, I don't know if that's one committee or seven, given how many topics are in that, but definitely want to make sure those get their place to get attention. Tangier, sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, I think it would probably be spreading us too thin to have all of, all those separate, because then it'd be okay, you're having a subcommittee for bicycling and pedestrian, and that's why my comments was well, it doesn't really need to be its own subcommittee. I think it's, because, and when budget considerations come up, it's, well, what's the budget for shared micromobility, or how are we interacting with our operators? Is that part of, when we make recommendations or give advice in that way when it comes up? Yeah. I don't know that it needs to be a standalone subcommittee, but considered as part of the whole.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, thanks. I'm interested in the macro level, because I don't want to necessarily get all the way down to the cracks in the sidewalk, which I know we're not going to, but I think you have to have that first before then you can decide really where you need to delve into and see where the problems are. So anything at the big macro level, I think we need to give it a little more consideration. I certainly will and like to be on that. And then on the other thing that struck me was that we talked a lot about equity. We've always been talking about equity, which is great. But I think when it comes to the budget, really, doesn't equity come down to allocation of resources? So we are equitable in our allocation of the resources more than anything else. So I think if you want to be on the budget committee, you also have to be on the equity committee, and how those two are tied together is probably the most important thing of all the stuff we're doing. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
That's a strong point there, Joe. We all know at the end of the day, it comes down to the dollars and where they're invested at. Did anyone else have any comments on that in the interest of time? Raymond, did you have any thoughts on that too as well, after hearing kind of what everybody said? Potential way to for us to move forward, because I feel like we didn't really get like a clear sense of, hey, we should move, this way. So kind of want to hear what you thought about that.
Oh, everybody brought up good points. Yeah, the committee stuff is, I think we're not gonna be able to come to a conclusion this meeting, of course, but might have to move that to the next meeting. But no, everybody else brought up, good points. So I have nothing else to add.
Michelle, would it be possible if we made just like a, blank list of potential subcommittees to send that out in the poll, so we can get some kind of interest from everyone, especially for people who weren't here today? Is that something that we could do?
Definitely.
Okay.
I'll take care of that.
And I guess if anyone has I think it would be great if you guys want to send just like, hey, potential quick names of the groups, of the topics. And I think it might be an absorbent list that we have to knock down one more time, but I just want to make sure that we're not missing out anybody's idea or potentially like what groups they want to see. So I think if we could probably just put that out in the poll, see what comes back, and then probably do it again, just to see if there are some overlapping things that can be fit in one subcommittee or not. I think that would be great, just to capture everybody's thought. Perfect. Next on the item, we got the DOTI budget. And this one, I kind of want to just shoot it over to Alan, if you wouldn't mind sharing what kind of thoughts that you had in regards to this.
Yeah, Antonio, thanks so much. To give you guys some context, I asked Antonio and Ray if I could bring up a topic this month or next month, and it's really around the budget. We're charged with really, advising DOTI on the budget and operations. And I think in a lot of ways, the ship has sailed on the 2022 budget, right? That's already being finalized and voted on by council. But I think there is an opportunity for us to look at the 2022 budget. And it would be a missed opportunity for us as a group not to make a statement and advise on some of the things that we think are important regarding equity, multi-mobility, Vision Zero, climate change mitigation. These are all incredible goals that I think our city has. And to quote Brent Tadarian, if you guys ever know a Vancouver city planner, he says, the truth about a city's aspiration isn't found in its vision, it's found in its budget. And candidly, my personal opinion is that we're missing the mark on prioritizing our dollars towards equity, towards Vision Zero, towards climate change. Just this weekend, a pedestrian was killed Colfax and Broadway. Today, if you saw on social media, a pedestrian was injured at Evans. Last week, I saw someone walking down, struggling to get down Sheridan Boulevard in a wheelchair. And then the person right next to him in a walker on this very narrow sidewalk that has, bushes coming out from it. I really think we have a ways to go. Our budget for 2022 is $6.9 million for the bike network, 4.8 million for sidewalks, 5.7 million for transit, and 3.5 million for Vision Zero, transportation and mobility safety. And while these numbers are great, it's great to see so much money. I think when you look at that and reflect that, we're spending, I want to say, 68 million on the I-25 and Broadway interchange. And a lot of that is federal money, right? But we also have earmarked, I think, 36 million from local funds, 4.5 million for the 16th Street Mall renovation. I don't necessarily know if these projects are reflective of our goals around equity, Vision Zero, climate change mitigation. And I think it's an opportunity for us to make a very high level statement as a board in the next few months and talk about the things that we think are important to really, before it's September next year and we're getting a final budget, to maybe give direction. We would like to see X, as Alicia pointed out before. I don't even know if it's measurable right now that we can see how much money is going to neighborhoods that have been historically neglected, like Lowville, Lyria, Swansea, and others all around the city. How do we make this more specific and measurable so we can actually account for this equity? And I think maybe asking for something like that as a group would be something I'd love to see us do in conversation over the next month or two, maybe come up with a statement that we vote on as a group to recommend to DOTI as they begin to shape their 2023 budget. So that was my thoughts. Thanks so much for letting me have a couple minutes, Antonio. I appreciate it.
Any thoughts on what Alan just shared with us?
It's a great idea and well articulated. And what really hits home for me is that we would be remiss if we did not at least comment on the 2022. Those are great numbers, but where is the money being invested? I don't want to call out District 8, but man, there's tens of miles of bike lanes running through my park, right? Well, that's great for everybody that lives in Central Park, but no one's using them to get to work. No one's using them to have better access to areas that are tough to get to. It's all pleasure. So anyway, I'd love to look at that.
I would too. I found myself thinking, well, wait, what if as a committee, like we're not keen on, where like the budget is now and what does that look like? And, it's hard to make comments on things if we weren't part of making them. I mean, these are sort of higher level conversations, but all that to say, I agree with a statement of some kind.
Well, I have a question here as far as level setting, because it sounds like obviously Alan and Chris and you guys are very much entrenched in the budget, but there might be other board members that need almost a primer. So I don't know if that would be beneficial in an upcoming meeting, or maybe what I don't want to do is have anybody come and lecture to you if you already know this information. So how do we from DOTI, and it's DOTI, everybody, just DOTI. How do we get everybody at the same, or at least be able to talk the same language when it comes to budget before we really start delving in? Or do we even need that?
I think we've got a lot of well-educated people, but I don't think having communication from the department will ever hurt us on any topic, Michelle. I think, there's a lot of components to the goals that DOTI has set out, and then where we are today, and then where we're spending. Like, I do know, like, the topic of the city auditor's sidewalk report, like, it would be good to get, a discussion from DOTI about that, and then figure out how that fits into the budget, because obviously 400 years to repair sidewalks that were built in 60 years doesn't make a lot of sense. So we should have conversations about those kinds of things. And I think that it's really important to me to hear from the department about these topics and where we are against these goals, budget or otherwise.
Joe, I saw that you previously came off mute. Did you have something to share? I think you may be muted, Joe.
Yeah. I didn't have anything, but I might as well say when I get a chance that I think all these are great conversations of what we need to do. And I would, for one, like to have some little more information just on the budget, or, more what's behind it. We all know how budgets work. And I always am amazed that, well, we really needed 100 million and we only got 5. So do what you want. And where was it just kind of thrown aside to kind of get you out of the way, and really where is it a need and all that. And I'm sorry to say, Chris, that riding your bike around for pleasure is not, not an unnecessary thing. So I don't think that that's terrible. Now, obviously, if people are getting killed in the intersection in the next district, then you don't want to neglect that at all, but we got to look at all sides of it. So, but anyway, I would like a little bit more information, and I don't think it would take more than 20 minutes or so. And just to find out, again, what was behind all that, And was that the first step, the initial step? Is that the end all? How's that fit with the rest of it? So it's putting the puzzle together would be helpful to me. Thanks.
Point made.
I think it gets to a core question that we have from DOTI, and I think this was expressed, is that I think this is also where we can get somewhere where we can leverage who we are as a board, which is DOTI's going to give a presentation, but we can dictate what they're going to present to us. And I think that's something that we can discuss at every meeting. Probably just always be a slot that's on the agenda that we just have up for discussion. I think, like Michelle said, a great start would just be a level setting presentation. And I think it would be great, and not just having the topic. I think I'm more of a visual person. So it would be great, for example, if we can get a map of the city and see where the dollars are in just visual context versus just a spreadsheet. So just seeing the data like that and in a way that's shareable. I think too, when people attend our meetings from a public standpoint, having that visual there where they see the city and they can have those bubbles of dollars, I think that's easily digestible than kind of sitting in a presentation that has all these numbers after you've been at work all day. So I think that'll be something too that we can control, regardless of it's just the budget, a specific project, sidewalks, bicycle lanes. We have that ability to request that from DOTI, and we can have that presented to us every month. So I think that's something that we can have. We can always have that conversation. Jason, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you jumped right into it again. What I was gonna, say is, use us as we're here, because I mean, we can help get you the information you need. There is nothing wrong if you don't know about a topic enough to feel comfortable to make a vote on it or anything else. Ask for more information. We're happy to try to provide everything we can. So use us. We're here to help get that information for you.
Thanks, Jason. Chris, go ahead.
I would just hope that there would be enough detail that in this discussion, it should be short, it should be brief, succinct, that we could understand what has been committed and what is ongoing, because there in budgets often there's carryover from the previous year, and it's spread out over 3 or 4 years or something like that. I would like to know that, because I'm not going to fight the fight of saying, oh my gosh, this is a bad idea if it's already started. But if it hasn't started and it's in the wings, then we really should be able to comment strongly on it, pro or con.
I don't know, Chris. I think that's something too that can be presented us in a way that's easy digestible. We can get it, completed projects, current projects, upcoming projects, and I feel like that can be displayed easily in some form or fashion. I know I keep referring to maps, but I know the department works a lot with GIS, and it's something that they can put together pretty easily. So I think we can definitely get that information set to us, kind of to Lucia's point out here. It'd be nice to have a primer for everyone. So, and I think too that goes well. I mean, just kind of thinking back to the public part, when somebody joins us and they take that journey with us throughout our process as a board, to give them that big starting piece of, hey, here's the budget, here's what's going on, here's the picture of today. I think that'll be great moving forward. So not only are we informed as a board, but the public is too as well. We provided that information to them too. So are there any more comments to that before we jump on to the next topic? Cool. Thank you, guys. Next I have on is report from DOTI leadership. Is that happening today, Michelle? Oh, nice.
Hello. Well, you guys, I think we've talked about the big thing I wanted to share here. budget here. We had our budget hearing with City Council a couple weeks ago. Right now, where we're at in the process, Council, you've probably seen, is developing, and I think has more or less developed the lists of amendments or changes they want to see to the budget. That will come in a formal letter from City Council. At that point, the mayor's office, our departments will kind of give a yay or nay on those, integrate those into the budget, and then that final, more or less agreed upon budget will go through council for final approval. One thing that might help this group, and that if I could figure out a way to share a file here, I would, but otherwise I may ask Ms. Faust to distribute it to the group, is the PowerPoint presentation from our hearing. One of the slides, and slide 7, Antonio, to your question about, or your comment about GIS and our equity map, where we actually, all of the projects referenced in the budget are overlaid across a kind of an equity heat map. And that tool is something I think we're very proud of, and we'll definitely get our GIS person in here to talk about what went into building it and how we use it. But I think it's a pretty sophisticated tool for how we, just from a geographic standpoint, prioritize our projects on there. So actually, I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions of any other topics or anything you guys are interested in. Mr. Cowgill.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Williams. That equity heat map, is that something that's publicly available that folks could look over?
I don't know if it's not. I mean, yes, from like a chorus down. I don't know if we have it on a web page, but it's definitely something we'll share with you guys.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm so used to Teams, I can't tell if people have raised hands or not. I will defer to the group.
Did you have a deadline of when those amendments will be kind of finalized? Did City Council giving that to you, or you giving that to City Council?
It should be. We're expecting it this week, and I would say probably the earlier part of this week. Full disclosure, we expected it last week, but everything's a process on there. But we should get those back this week, and we can certainly get that out to the group as well. That's public.
FYI, drop the link to the presentation we gave to council on the budget, so you have it there as well. You can follow it if you haven't seen it.
So I would, draw your attention specifically to slide 7 if you want a little bit more information on the equity, just a taste of that tool and kind of what we're able to do with it. But more to come on that, certainly.
Okay. Anyone else have any question? I guess I'm trying to pull it up now, but does that? Oh.
The link looks like it's the whole presentation. Do we have a link just to the slideshow?
Yeah, sorry. I think there was confusion. I wasn't able to put the actual presentation in there either. It blocks me for some reason. We'll get that emailed out. This is just a link to the presentation we gave to council that we actually presented in front of council, and their questions and answers as well. So in case you missed that.
Is this the one where the guy talked about bulldozing houses for bike lanes?
I think I know what you're talking about. I think that's how some people took it. Yeah, we're not bulldozing a lot of houses at DOTI.
I have questions about that comment, a lot of questions about that comment that I would love to hear more from DOTI on why there was a comment about needing to use eminent domain to build bike lanes. I think it didn't make a lot of sense to the general public.
Sure. And yeah, that was certainly played out. So the comment, if it was bike lanes or sidewalks, just kind of trying to clarify the challenge of building sidewalk where there isn't sidewalk before, sidewalk gaps on there. I think certainly everyone agrees that we should fill in our gaps. There are a number of scenarios where the right-of-way line is so close that through legal interpretation, the city would have to, in order to build that sidewalk, they would have to do either a partial or a full take of a home to do that. And that's just played out through legal precedent. That's the legal counsel we have. So we certainly are not taking homes to fill in sidewalk gaps. We work through other creative situations. That was really to illustrate how things that seem simple oftentimes are not. But certainly folks, you know, no one's come up with evidence that we've plowed it down a house to build a sidewalk, so I'm not sure how it went as far as it did on there, but really that was a, go ahead.
Nick, I think what you're missing is what was really unsaid in that comment. And the comment is that you would need to go into right of way rather than taking away the parking that we provide for private vehicles to extend sidewalks for pedestrians. That's what was, I think, the controversy lies, is that you would consider or even mention or even say, you being DOTI, not you, Nick, personally, that would even come up versus, God forbid, you take away a row of parking to make things safer for pedestrians and cyclists.
And that, I think that's certainly how it was interpreted. That wasn't how it was intended. It was really intended to show the challenge of specifically around sidewalks, sometimes with bike lanes, that you don't have kind of carte blanche to just put the sidewalk down. Now I get what you're saying, and we've certainly demonstrated our willingness to take parking when building bicycle infrastructure. But in this case, this was not about, we'd rather bulldoze a house than take a line of parking. It was really, there are scenarios where we will get to a point where the right of way, meaning the what's often called the tree lawn, is insufficiently large, or the house is built in such a way that in order to build that sidewalk, we would limit access to the house to the point where we would have to take the house. And that, of course, no one thinks taking homes, decreasing our housing stock is the right policy move. So it's incumbent upon DOTI to be more creative in those situations, build with what we've got. If that's taking parking, that's taking parking. But really this was intended to show the challenges for things that seem simple, like filling in a sidewalk gap, not that our priority is to take homes before parking on there. But certainly, I think that's one of those things that we understood what was being discussed, but certainly how it came out caused some confusion. That wasn't the intention.
Thank you for that, Nick. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to touch on as we wrap up here before we talk about next steps?
I mentioned it earlier, but I think maybe not at the next meeting, but at a meeting down the road in the report from DOTI, it would be really great to get a report because I think the work the city auditor did around the sidewalk program and its shortcomings left a lot of open questions, and I think it'd be good to get DOTI's perspective for this board so that we can reflect upon that. And it wasn't from the auditor, but likewise, I know that the bicycle program also has fallen short of its goals over the past few years, and would likewise like to hear basically about both of those programs, since they are so core to other goals that DOTI's outlined, like Vision Zero and climate action. It'd be great to hear from the department on, where have challenges been and how can we, what decisions were made along the way. But basically just want to have that insight as a board so that we can move forward on those topics.
For sure. And the sidewalk thing especially, we're working on some different policy directions here. And I think that will be ripe within the next month or so to talk about, for sure. That's a big one. That's, and kind of going back to that, the misinterpreted comment on there. And that's something I think we really want this board's help on, and really want this board's understanding of kind of the challenges that we face with a number of these these projects that while they seem simple, nothing is simple, and kind of your input and what are some creative ways we're not thinking about things? What are we missing here? How can we meet as many of these goals? We're never going to make everyone happy. You work at DOTI for about 20 minutes and you realize that, but I think this group understanding the tension of a lot of the projects that we're trying to deliver and kind of your perspectives on how we can do those better. I think that's for sure what we're looking for.
I'll just add one thing to the sidewalk piece that Jake brought up is Nick, we have something coming down the pipeline and we hope to bring that to you early on before it's baked in so you can get the conversation really going here as well. So it's something that hopefully we can bring to you all and discuss further. But in these scenarios like that, is this something you would like us to bring up to you? That if there's a policy shift, there's something that we're doing, and we kind of give you the option to bring that to the board, or what's the process on that? Instead of just the executive, because this might require more time, because the new policies are a little bit more in depth.
I think definitely when we touch on something that's going to impact how projects are rolling out across the city, especially when you talk about a policy change, I think that would be great to at least be presented with that information. And then I think too as well, I think as a board we can decide like, hey, is this something that we feel like we need to dive into and have a little bit more input to share back with you guys? But I think at least, being notified or say, hey, like guys, this is where we want to do this. And getting our thoughts. I think that'd be great. I think and also just a good transparency point too, as well, in terms of just making sure the message is getting out there too.
Absolutely.
In terms of next step, guys, please, I think it'll be great. I think just kind of recapping potential next 2 meetings: budget, sidewalk, bicycle program. Those are 3 presentations that, or at least some more information that we want to hear back from DOTI. And then likewise, if you guys have any other agenda items, please shoot them over to Raymond and I. And I think this is just kind of just looking at the schedule that we had to see, and kind of like we were able to stay on to a certain extent on schedule. I think we might be able to squeeze in maybe 2 additional topics to where we can have presentation and feedback, have our public comment. So I think what we'll try to do is put together Michelle, if it's okay, we can do maybe a draft agenda, see what people think. I just know we have a vocal group, so that time for discussion when we get something is going to be key. Probably won't ever be quick. So, and then I think the last step will be making sure that everybody kind of goes in, touches on those bylaws, or at least take another glance at those. Leave your comments, share them in any way that you can. And then for sure, if there's anything pressing, let us know, or, you guys know what to do. Hit the group up and let's start some dialogue about it. So is there anything else I'm missing, you guys? Raymond, did you have anything to add?
No, sir. You're the much better talker than I am, so I have nothing to add.
All right. And the next one is of course. I think one thing too, to Alicia's point, if we can, I'll reach out to you, either Nick, Jason, Michelle, potentially maybe lining up to get somebody from the new Chief Equity Office to come maybe talk to us about, what we can do as a group to build our own definition, what that looks like from a city standpoint. I think that's another big agenda item that should be pretty high on our bucket too as well. So, but I think we have a nice slate of things to talk about next time we meet. So, yeah, like I said, if you guys have any other comments, please notify us and let's get the ball rolling.
Said, sir.
Cool. If you guys have don't have anything else. I hope you guys have a good night, and thank you for, again, the time that you dedicate to being here. Brian and Alan, thank you for getting that bylaw set up. That was a roaring start. It's not the sexy part, but it's important. So thank you for that. And of course, Jason, Nick, Michelle, thank you for being here and just kind of steering us through this conversation.
Thank you all. Very good. Antonio, well done. Well done.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
See you
evening.
next month, guys.